Have you ever stood up for what you believe in, even when facing a powerful authority? What if that authority held the very keys to your survival? Imagine being a young man, torn from your homeland, brought to a foreign court, and offered the most lavish delicacies imaginable, food fit for a king. But what if that food went against everything you held sacred? This is the story of Daniel and his friends, a tale of unwavering faith in the face of royal decree. The air in the opulent halls of King Nebuchadnezzar's palace in Babylon thrummed with a palpable tension, a strange and unsettling symphony of grandeur and underlying fear. Sunlight, fractured by colossal stained glass windows depicting mythical beasts and triumphant battles, painted kaleidoscopic patterns on the polished marble floors. The scent of exotic incense, heavy and sweet, mingled with the metallic tang of weaponry carried by the ever-present guards, their polished bronze armor gleaming under the artificial light of towering oil lamps. The murmur of hushed conversations in Akkadian, a language still foreign and perplexing to their ears, echoed through the vast corridors, punctuated by the authoritative commands barked by royal officials. Young Daniel, his brow furrowed in quiet contemplation, moved through these imposing spaces alongside his companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They felt like small boats tossed about in a vast, unpredictable ocean of foreign customs. The sheer scale of the palace was overwhelming. Colossal winged bulls guarded monumental doorways adorned with intricate carvings of victorious kings and conquered enemies. Every detail, from the richly woven tapestries depicting scenes of Babylonian mythology to the gold-inlaid furniture, spoke of unimaginable wealth and power, a stark contrast to the relative simplicity of their former lives in Jerusalem. They were, indeed, among the Shumshu Ummah, the finest of the land, the brightest and most noble of the Jewish exiles, carefully selected for their intellect and bearing. For 3 years, they were to immerse themselves in the complex cuneiform script etched onto clay tablets, decipher the celestial movements studied by the Chaldean astrologers, and master the intricacies of their language and literature, all in preparation to become advisors and administrators in the king's vast empire. Did the young eyes widen in awe at the sight of the towering ziggurats, those stepped pyramids reaching for the heavens like man-made mountains, dedicated to the Babylonian deities? Perhaps, a fleeting sense of wonder might have flickered within him at the sheer audacity of such constructions. But this initial marvel was quickly overshadowed by a deeper, more persistent ache. The vibrant colors and bustling activity of Babylon could not mask the raw wound of their displacement. The memories of their beloved Jerusalem, the familiar scent of cedarwood from the temple, the comforting rhythm of Hebrew prayers, these were the anchors that held their hearts, now tethered to a distant shore. Every foreign sound, every unfamiliar ritual, served as a painful reminder of what they had lost, their homeland, their community, and most poignantly, the desecrated temple, the very heart of their spiritual lives, now in ruins. A silent grief, a profound longing for Zion, resonated within the depths of their souls, a constant undercurrent beneath the surface of their forced assimilation. Each day in Babylon unfolded with a dizzying array of new sights and sounds, a relentless assault on their senses that served as a constant, low-humming reminder of their captivity. The cacophony of street vendors hawking their wares in a language they were still struggling to grasp, the rhythmic chanting of priests in the towering temples dedicated to Bel and Marduk, the mournful wail of unfamiliar musical instruments during religious processions, all painted a vivid picture of a world utterly different from the quiet familiarity of Jerusalem. The very air seemed thick with the scent of foreign spices and the smoke from countless cooking fires, a stark contrast to the cleaner, earthier aromas of their homeland. Then, amidst this sensory overload, came the royal decree concerning their sustenance, delivered with an air of what the Babylonians likely perceived as magnanimous benevolence. King Nebuchadnezzar, in his imperial magnanimity, had ordained that these promising young exiles be provided with a daily portion of his own table's fare and the choicest of his wine. Imagine the sheer abundance laid before them, a stark contrast to the often meager rations they might have endured during their journey. Picture the heavy silver platters, piled high with glistening roasted meats, perhaps fatty lamb or succulent fowl, their surfaces shimmering with rendered fat and liberally dusted with vibrant, unknown spices like saffron and cumin, their aromas both enticing and unsettling. Visualize mounds of fluffy, leavened bread, richer and sweeter than the unleavened bread they were accustomed to. Envision bowls overflowing with creamy sauces, thickened with milk and eggs, ingredients whose very preparation might have violated the dietary laws. And then there was the wine. Picture the heavy, intricately carved goblets, filled to the brim with the deepest ruby liquid, its surface catching the flickering light of the oil lamps, promising warmth and perhaps a temporary escape from their anxieties. For many of the other exiles, perhaps those less deeply rooted in their faith or simply weary from their ordeal, this royal offering might have been a welcome respite, a taste of unimaginable luxury in a land that felt so alien and hostile. The rich flavors and intoxicating aroma could have offered a momentary comfort, a fleeting illusion of acceptance within this powerful empire, a way to perhaps numb the pain of exile. But for Daniel and his close-knit companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, this seemingly generous provision presented a profound and agonizing dilemma. The Jewish faith, passed down through generations, was not merely a set of rituals but a deeply ingrained way of life, its very fabric woven with strict dietary laws. The Torah meticulously outlined what was kashrut, fit for consumption, and what was tameh, ritually unclean. The manner in which animals were slaughtered, the prohibition against consuming blood, the separation of milk and meat, these were not arbitrary rules but sacred commandments. Furthermore, they understood that the king's food, before reaching their plates, would undoubtedly have been offered as a sacrifice to the pantheon of Babylonian idols, to Bel, to Ishtar, to Nebo. To partake in such food would not only violate the physical tenets of their faith, but would also constitute a symbolic participation in pagan worship, a direct transgression against the very first commandment, "You shall have no other gods before me." Could they, in good conscience, defile themselves with these forbidden foods, even under the compelling guise of royal command and the implicit threat of displeasing the king? What would their ancestors, who had endured hardship and persecution to uphold God's laws, think of their willing compliance? The weight of their heritage, the sanctity of their faith, pressed heavily upon the young shoulders, forcing them to confront a choice that would define their identity in this foreign land. Daniel, a young man known for his wisdom and quiet strength, felt a deep conviction stirring within him. He looked at his companions, their faces etched with similar concern. Hananiah, whose name meant "God has favored," was a man of steadfast loyalty to his faith. Mishael, meaning "who is like God," possessed a quiet determination. And Azariah, whose name signified "the Lord helps," radiated a gentle but firm piety. Together, they understood the gravity of their situation. To partake in the king's food would be to compromise their deeply held beliefs, to symbolically bow down to the foreign gods that Nebuchadnezzar worshipped. With a respectful yet resolute spirit, Daniel approached the chief official, Ashpenaz, who was responsible for their care. Imagine the scene: the young exile, barely a man in the eyes of the powerful Babylonian courtier, requesting an audience. Did Ashpenaz scoff at his seemingly insignificant plea? Perhaps he saw in Daniel's eyes a quiet dignity that commanded attention. "O Ashpenaz, if it pleases you," Daniel began, his voice calm but firm, "I request that we, your servants, may not defile ourselves with the king's food or wine." He didn't make demands or accusations, but rather presented a humble request based on their religious convictions. He understood the potential risk to Ashpenaz, whose own life was tied to the well-being of these young exiles. Ashpenaz, though perhaps sympathetic to Daniel's plight, voiced his apprehension. "I fear my lord the king, who has assigned your food and drink. If he sees you looking thinner and less healthy than the other young men your age, my head will be forfeit to the king." His words were a stark reminder of the absolute power Nebuchadnezzar wielded. The choice for Daniel and his friends was not merely about food, it was about their lives, and potentially the life of the official responsible for them. Imagine the weight of that moment. The allure of safety and comfort dangled before them, easily attainable with a simple act of compliance. Yet, the cost, the violation of their conscience, was too high. Daniel, however, was not deterred. He possessed a wisdom beyond his years, a quiet confidence rooted in his faith. He proposed a test to Ashpenaz's steward, the one directly in charge of their food. Picture Daniel's earnest face as he made his plea. "Please test your servants for 10 days, he requested. "Give us nothing but vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the royal food, and deal with your servants according to what you see." This was a bold proposition, a direct challenge to the perceived superiority of the king's diet. It was a testament to their unwavering belief that God would sustain them even without the rich provisions of the Babylonian court. Did the steward hesitate? Surely, the king's meticulously planned diet was considered the epitome of nourishment. Yet, there must have been something in Daniel's earnestness, in the quiet conviction of his companions, that persuaded him to agree to the trial. For 10 long days, Daniel and his friends adhered to their simple diet of vegetables and water. Imagine their steadfastness, the temptation of the fragrant aromas wafting from the royal kitchens, the curious glances of their fellow trainees. They placed their trust not in earthly sustenance but in the provision of their God. At the end of the 10 days, the steward examined them. What he saw must have astonished him. The scripture records that their appearance was healthier and better nourished than that of all the young men who had been eating the royal food. It was a visible manifestation of their faith, a testament to God's faithfulness. The steward, witnessing this undeniable evidence, decided to remove their portion of the royal food and the wine they were to drink, and instead provided them with vegetables. Imagine the relief and gratitude that filled the hearts of Daniel and his friends. Their unwavering commitment had not only preserved their conscience but had also resulted in tangible favor. This was not the end of their trials in Babylon, but it marked a significant victory, a powerful statement of their unwavering devotion. They had refused to compromise their faith, even when faced with the allure of royal favor and the threat of potential harm. Their story echoes through the ages, a potent reminder that true strength lies not in worldly power, but in the courage to stand firm in one's convictions, even when the stakes are high. What would you have done in their place? Would you have had the courage to refuse the king's food?